ongoing, months-long investigation aimed at disrupting the flow of illegal drugs into our community. All of the illegal heroin and fentanyl were seized from an address on the 4300 block of Wimbledon Drive Southwest in the city of Granville, Michigan. The suspect, well, this is the seizure of the fentanyl. This is approximately 500 grams of fentanyl that was seized from this address. There's also another 250 grams of heroin. So this is a half a kilo of fentanyl and a quarter kilo heroin. Significant amount. The subject of this investigation was located at the residence and arrested. He is Daryl Mitchell. He has been arraigned in the 59th District Court and charged with possession with the intent to deliver fentanyl between 450 and 999 grams. He also has a significant history of drug trafficking. 500 grams of fentanyl is a substantial amount. This is the largest amount ever seized by the Grand Rapids Police Department Vice Unit. Its potential harm could be very, very immense. For context, a lethal dose of fentanyl is as small as 2 milligrams. With this seizure, this much fentanyl had the potential to kill every resident in the city of Grand Rapids and in Granville, up to 250,000 people. Fentanyl, as we all know, is an incredibly dangerous substance. Its presence in our community poses an urgent threat to public safety. It can be mixed with other drugs, quite often with heroin, unknowingly ingested, and result in devastating overdoses. We will continue to use all available resources to track down and dismantle illegal drug operations in our area. This seizure is an important reminder of the ongoing opioid epidemic affecting communities nationwide, and we are no exception here. We encourage the public to remain vigilant, report any suspicious activity to law enforcement. We also continue to urge individuals struggling with addiction to seek help from local treatment programs and support services, which we are very thankful for, especially in the city of Grand Rapids. By way of comparison, how this epidemic is affecting Grand Rapids Police specifically. Last year, our officers used Narcan or naloxone for overdoses up to 40 times in the course of their duties. This is a training we received several years ago, and it has been very helpful in saving lives out there. Thankfully, it has also now gone into the community. More people have access to it and more lives are saved because of it. The overdose deaths, though, are what's the tragic result of this fentanyl. In 2023, we had 39 fatal drug overdoses in the city of Grand Rapids. In 2024, preliminary information is approximately 30 drug overdoses in the city of Grand Rapids. The toxicology results from these people who tragically lost their lives shows that almost 75% of these overdose deaths had some sort of fentanyl as a part of the reason why they died. Another stat is that the Grand Rapids Police Department in the last 2 years has responded to 180 non-fatal overdoses. And we know that is only a fraction. Those are just ones that were reported to GRPD. You can almost probably double or triple that amount for the reality. This investigation, as we said, is ongoing. We'll be working to identify those responsible for trafficking these dangerous substances in our community. Charges will be pursued. We want to thank the public for the information that they give us so we can take these drugs off the streets. We remain fully committed to keeping our community safe from these drugs. And with that, I will open up to any questions for myself or Chief Winstrom.
This was an apartment complex, right?
It was.
What if this was in an apartment building or other residents in the building impacted by this?
It's a very good point you make, which is why I have a photo of the fentanyl and I can't actually bring it out here. Our procedures and policies changed over the years because of fentanyl and our officers and the exposure we've seen around the country with how dangerous this substance is. So yes, when we have it in an area with a lot of people, apartment complexes and things like that, yeah, the danger of fentanyl being ingested or inhaled secondarily is highly dangerous. He also had a respirator in his apartment, so he knew also how dangerous this was.
Can you get into where it came from, or are there others involved, that type of thing?
It's still an open investigation, obviously, and they're still tracking a lot of that down. I can't say for sure where it came from. We know anecdotally where a lot of this comes from, right? This is ingredients from China, comes into Mexico, it's manufactured there, and somehow makes it over the border into our communities. This just highlights, though, that you can't stop this completely. And that's where you rely on our vice detectives and our local law enforcement to also do this enforcement too and take this off the streets. This is the last destination other than going to the user. So if we can interrupt that, we are successful in probably saving a lot of lives.
Do you have an idea of where it was going? Obviously throughout the Grand Rapids area, Kent County, where else?
That's still information we're working on. That'll be part of the investigation.
Can I say something?
Joe, will you bring up that the picture of that chunk of fentanyl, and it looks to be preliminarily pure fentanyl. I don't know, about a pound. My math is off, but half a kilo. It's at about
1.1 pounds.
1.1 pounds of pure fentanyl. But a highlight, Deputy Chief Maycroft said 250. The capability of just that small amount to kill 250,000 individuals. We're talking terroristic level of danger related to this. And I believe Deputy Chief mentioned that the individual had a respirator. And although this man, I believe, just recently got out of prison for 17 years for drug trafficking, finds himself with this much extremely deadly fentanyl in his apartment, and he's going to likely cut it, which means that, reduce that to a level that he thinks that a human can ingest. And what I cannot put an exclamation point on enough is that this seizure took this extremely deadly substance away from an individual who is not a licensed pharmacist, who I'm sure his only experience is whatever he learned in prison for 17 years and what he knew about the cocaine trade, maybe the heroin trade before this. But this is a game changer, fentanyl. And I have no doubt that this would have led to illegal sales of a deadly substance to numerous people in the West Michigan area. And we would have had, I can't tell you how many people would have died because, as I said, this individual thinks he's going to put on a respirator, cut this down to something that, 0.2, what is it? Deadly, 0.2 milligrams or something like that. You would have to take a razor blade and cut that thousands and thousands of times to get something that's not deadly. This was a disaster of epic proportions waiting to happen. We've had over last summer, in Hartside Park, we had days where we had 3, 4, 5 individuals experiencing an overdose. This would have been an epic scale. I'm so thankful for the Vice unit, what they did. It's an extremely dangerous job to go undercover and to interact with these individuals. Look, you guys, some of you know I've had a complex relationship with the so-called war on drugs in my life, having a loved one go to prison because he was addicted. However, drugs are not a victimless crime when someone's dealing drugs outside your neighborhood, driving violence. Drugs are not a victimless crime when a loved one overdoses on fentanyl. This fentanyl epidemic that we have in this country has taken this to a whole nother level. And I'm super thankful for our vice detectives doing this because we would be up here talking about having a press conference about dozens of individuals in Grand Rapids dead because a wannabe pharmacist who wants to make a quick dollar off of individuals suffering from narcotics addiction. So very thankful for the work that was done today.
Context about how big is that? Is there something you can relate that to size-wise?
Yeah, it's a pretty good brick. So there's actually 2 chunks of it. This was the larger chunk. We didn't want to expose our forensics people to more of this stuff, right? So they did get a better photograph of it, but it's about like this. It's a pretty good chunk. So it's about 500 grams, about 1.1 pounds in comparison. a significant amount of fentanyl. Like I said, this is the largest amount we've ever seized through the Grand Rapids Police Department Vice Unit.
Can you talk a little bit more vaguely about what goes into an investigation like this, and getting this off the street?
Well, we also have to, if you look at the Grand Rapids Vice Unit, I know there's been some questions about what is the Grand Rapids Vice Unit, okay? This is a men and women. They are normally in an undercover capacity. There is a lieutenant, 2 sergeants, and 12 detectives that are assigned. Their main focus is on illicit drug sales, human trafficking and prostitution, alcohol and tobacco enforcement. Obviously, drugs is still a big part of their job, especially when they get this. So these detectives, through working confidential informants and other sources, are able to start working these cases and working in conjunction sometimes with our federal partners and sometimes with other agencies as well to develop the information that leads them into these investigations. This guy was obviously been known. He had a prior history of drugs. I can't get into exactly the details of the investigation still because it is open, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of good communication skills and investigatory skills. And when you get into the Vice Unit, you are a top-notch detective. All our detectives are fantastic. They really, really are. But this is just a different version of what they are going to be investigating. And they have to have that skill level, but they also have to have that family support. I did 2 years in Vice myself. It can get into a seedy world out there, and it can kind of make you go, I never dreamed we had this in the city of Grand Rapids. It was eye-opening to me, even after being a cop for 10 years. So these are a special group of people, special group of men and women, just like all of our people are here. But they do have to now put themselves at risk when they are executing a search warrant with a half a kilo of fentanyl that they are searching through.
How disturbing is the trend of just seeing, I mean, you had your largest cocaine bust in October of 2023. That was, I think, about 81 pounds. There's that $1.2 million forfeiture drug bust last year. Now this for fentanyl. Just feels like you guys keep getting the largest bust of X, Y, and Z drugs. How disturbing is that you're seeing this uptick here in Grand Rapids?
Thank God we have men and women that are taking this off the street before it hits another victim. And I think it is disturbing. And as the chief mentioned, last year in Hartside Park, we had multiple overdoses. And we'll see this throughout the days and the weeks. We'll have all of a sudden, we'll get 3, 4 overdoses, sometimes in a day. And we know that a batch of heroin came in that somebody stepped on, probably with fentanyl, and it's now causing people to overdose and to sometimes die, which is terrible. So when we see those trends, we try to sometimes we'll send out warnings to you guys, and it's not to scare everybody, it's to put everybody on notice. Our community, it's a community problem, right? And we, unfortunately, all of us know somebody struggling with addiction. We know somebody, unfortunately, a family that's lost someone to an overdose. And for the community to know that's happening, to have that information, to be able to get Narcan in case their loved one accidentally overdoses, because most of these are accidental, to save them, to call us, to be aware. If we can save one life, that's extremely important.
Is the fentanyl issue disproportionately impacting a specific community?
If you go back to the overdose deaths, you have a lot, as you'll see, in what I would classify, obviously, as our Hartside area, our downtown, our unhoused population, unfortunately, we all know has sometimes an addiction issue with the unhoused population. Our third ward appears also disproportionately affected as well. But as you can also see, the entire city is represented here. And these are just deaths. We got to remember there's 180 other overdoses that we responded to just GRPD in the last 2 years. So that's just a fraction of what's going on.
What's your message to the next person or persons that are going to try to bring something like this into the community?
We're going to do everything in our power to find you and lock you up and throw away the key. I think it is the key here. This guy just served 17 years in federal prison for trafficking cocaine. He got out last year. He didn't learn his lesson. He needs to go to prison, and probably for the rest of his life. We're going to let the court system handle that and the juries as well. But we are going to find you. We're going to track you down with these awesome detectives that we have, and we're going to lock you up.
You said he's already arraigned?
Yep.
Are you sure?
Today.
Okay, I was like, okay, just making sure.
It was happening today. I thought it would have been done by now, but it will be today, 59th District Court.
Thank you.
You said this was the largest fentanyl. What was the second largest, if you know?
We had another 9-ounce, but it wasn't pure fentanyl. This is the largest of what we suspect preliminarily. Okay, lab results need to come back first. But when they were testing this, they had never seen anything this pure before in our history. So obviously this information may change a little bit when the lab comes back, but by the experts in the detective unit and the vice unit, they said, I have not seen this. Because it's off a brick like this, they believe it came over probably in a kilogram of fentanyl before it got here. So obviously there's 250 more or 500 more grams are missing. So that's the other scary part about this.
You spoke a little bit to the impact that you had by having this bust on saving potential victims who would have died from overdose or had an overdose. But what about, in Kalamazoo, we just had a man who was sentenced to 27 years for his role in an overdose death. And I think something that big was probably going to be going out to other dealers in the area. Can you speak to their hand in something like this and the risk people are taking of getting involved? Like they're looking at a potential of years in prison for something much smaller because of that small amount that can lead to a death with fentanyl.
It's a great question because every time we get an overdose death, our vice unit is called in from home or wherever they are to investigate just that. And because from there, on the victims, especially if we have an overdose death victim, we do everything we can to find out where they got that, to find out who was the supplier, who is the dealer, and if they're responsible for their death, we will charge them with that. So it is a very, again, another in-depth investigation. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of resources, but this is their job and they're really good at it. And we do get charges and convictions almost yearly for that.
It sounds like this started out in Grand Rapids and ended in Granville. Did that complicate anything going out of the?
It did not. We have a great working relationship with the Granville Police Department. I don't think this is reflective upon their community. This is where he laid his head. This is where he was hiding with his drugs. And he doesn't have them anymore, and that's good for both communities.
Is that it? Everybody good? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. She will be sending out a condensed press release with a lot of this information for you, with photos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.